Hello, buddy. This is going to be the third and final part of this chapter out of the Bigfoot Terror Tales book called Night Stalkers. So, let's just get right to it, and I'll see you towards the end. Rachel snapped into a quick sense of reality and looked around. The heavy breathing was all around her and getting closer with each pounding footstep. "What do you freaking people want?" she screamed. With a spastic back and forth motion of her whipping head and hair, she made her way from the mini hole in the ground and took off. Without an instinct to see what or who was following her, she could still hear the many footsteps that trampled behind her in a solid stomping and killing pace. As the ground raced beneath her feet, she noticed several large footprints in the snow, much like the hole in which she thought she had fallen into a few sprinted yards behind her. She suddenly tripped face first in the below -degree snow. She could hear them getting closer with each pounding trample. She jumped up and limped as fast as she could and was not about to pay attention to who was relentlessly on her trail of attempted escape. Rachel was painfully aware that there were more than one after her. She also knew they wanted to do her harm in a severe way. No matter how close they were gaining behind Rachel, she was blind to the fact that they were extremely far from the human species. The sharp pain in her right ankle slowed her down as her heart defeated her pace by miles. She took off her high-heeled boots and began running in inches of penetrated snow. The pulsating pain in her right leg did not help her game of tug-of-war with struggling speed and descended physical stability. "Just leave me alone," she cried into the storming winds that scraped against her face like a thick wall of whirling bewilderment. There was no vehicles or signs of life for miles. Everyone was faithfully abiding to the curfew laid down by the law. Even the police force had more than one reason to stay indoors. This included the rough weather conditions on the icy streets, not to mention the nameless killer in which they were clueless to where or who he would strike next. Rachel's ankle gave out with a sudden pop. Oh, I know that had to hurt. Oh. She was embedded in the snowy ground once more. The sky beam ray of moonlight that somewhat guided her was divided by huge human-like shadows as they surrounded her. She could not scream as she realized who had been following her from the motel. They did not want her money. They did not want to assault her. They wanted her for a late-night snack. Rachel was reaching her final breath. She was about to become the link to a food chain in which she never knew existed. This was no serial killer, but Rachel was about to become another marked satisfaction, a statistic all the same. In the meantime, Williford noticed a large silhouette at his window as it raised its hand and put it against the glass with a quaking thud. The monstrous hand lowered as the long nails scraped against the frost-tinted bedroom window. He noticed another giant figure standing behind it. "Mama!" "There! Monsters outside of the window." "Monsters? There are monsters!" Williford wailed in what seemed like a hopeless, doomed moan of despair to a child in his condition. "There he goes again," Jill announced in a deeply battered sigh of agonizing defeat. "Can you go check on him this time?" Jill asked as she barely raised her head. "Yeah, I'll do it," Gregory said in a completely submissive manner. "Good," Jill stated in a dead utter as she rolled over and drifted back into dreamland. Local authorities have just released the news that more than one perpetrator is involved in this horrific case that seems to stalk our once silent, the reporter announced on the television as Gregory grabbed the remote. He turned off the announcement mid-sentence on the way into the hallway as he rubbed his adjusting eyes. Williford was crying wolf in the least bit as his mother may have expected. He was truly screaming for dear life. Something was outside of his window, and he knew it was not make-believe. His imagination could not drum up something so terrifying and nerve-shattering. The fear was all too real. As Gregory opened Williford's bedroom door, the lingering shadows began to leave visible sight of the window. They spread out and around the house. Williford was screaming on the floor next to his bed. "Will, how did you get down there? Are you okay?" Gregory asked in fearful courtesy. "Bad people outside. They're going to get me," Williford shouted as Gregory reached down to retrieve his son and set him back onto the bed. "It's okay, Will. There's no one out," Gregory began to say as a loud bang came from somewhere in the hallway. "Craig, someone's outside the window. Someone is watching us," Jill screamed bloody murder from her bedroom. Gregory was caught between his grieving child and suddenly ballistic wailing wife. He was beginning to have second thoughts in Williford's shrieks. Just as he was debunking his son's possible overactive imagination, Jill's ear-blasted screams reconfirmed both Gregory and Williford's realization that this was no figment of mental fatality. The other four eyes of the home were certain of what Gregory's own two had not yet witnessed. He was instantly cradled in his family's contagiously shared fear. He took Williford into his arms and ran into the bedroom. "What happened, Jill?" Gregory asked in panic as he looked into the room. Jill was right next to the door, on her way into the hall. A muffled snarl greeted Gregory through the glass, along with large, salivant teeth. It was truly a monster indeed, a beast-like Sasquatch creature. There were more than one of the hungry and vicious growlers of the night searching for prey. There were several, and a small group had found their way to Gregory's humble abode. The mammoth creature let out an angry roar as its paws came crashing through the window. "Take Will and run." "Oh yeah, I'll be telling her that too. You gotta go arm yourself because you don't want them Bigfoots inside your home." Gregory grabbed his rifle from the gun case by the wall. There you go. He had always kept one loaded in case the unfortunate call of home security should ever rear its ugly head. He did not know what to think of this particular occurrence, but he knew he did not have time to do so. His first reactions were to aim the deadly double-barreled steel and put the trigger along with a whining yelp. He did just that. Another crash of shattering glass came from the living room. A roaring growl accompanied the unnerving clatter that arose down the hall. The beast went flying backwards through the broken and jagged glass just as one of the beasts was taken out by pump action. Another was entering the home through the living room. Jill fled in that fatal direction, with Williford screaming in her arms. Just as the front window served as a second entrance, a second blood and snow-caked Sasquatch was in the living room and looking around for something to eat. Jill froze in her tracks and let out a terrified shriek of shock. The beast came charging for her just as the cold steel barrel extended over her shoulder. Gregory shot the inhuman intruder in the head as it fell backwards onto the coffee table. There was a constant pounding on the back patio door until finally an inevitable and collectively dreaded shatter followed. Another creature had made its way into the family's once secure space and somewhat cozy comfort zone. The glass and wooden structure was no match for the 400 pounds of fur, power, and fury. A group of unwanted visitors evidently wanted a warm and welcome and forced entry into the home. Gregory, Jill, and Williford had no idea how many were out there. The Cridger family was certain that they wanted into their home. Nothing seemed as if could stop their appetite for intrusion and quench for human delicacies. Gregory could hear the kitchen being ransacked as he made his way toward the living room to kitchen entrance. A lonesome growl could be heard In the darkness, Gregory pulled the trigger in an early overreaction, but nothing happened. He was out of bullets. Oh man, he should have stocked up on bullets. They're going to be coming after him now. He could feel warm air as it huffed and puffed on his face through the darkness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 more bullets. With his quivering hands, he loaded the gun in the dark and flipped on the light. There, standing 2 feet in front of his face, was a third bloodthirsty hairball with sharp teeth and huge hands, feet, and nails. It growled ferociously as it grabbed Gregory, lifting his feet from the kitchen tile. The face and mouth of the man-like monster was covered in blood and leftovers of the helpless victims from earlier in the night. These were the poor souls mentioned on the Channel 13 evening news. Gregory knew that he not only had to protect himself, but his triplet family bloodline as well. Their lives and well-being meant more to Gregory than his own. They were all he had to hold on to. This was his family. Gregory wanted to scream, "Leave me and my family alone." Like so many of the horror movies he had seen that had the bargaining option, he knew somewhere within his fight or flight state of mind that these attackers would not understand a single word. To these beasts, the family was one thing and one thing only: brunch. Gregory knew that if he didn't do something in a heartbeat, that he would be eaten alive in his own kitchen and in front of his wife and son. They would more than likely be next, and it was the last thing he wanted to happen. Gregory screamed as he pointed the barrel straight up and firmly against the chin of the hungry mouth that could possibly consume and digest him. He pulled the trigger, shooting the beast at point-blank range. The last snarling threat to his family's lives was dead within his own castle. Along with 3 others, Gregory ran for the phone to call the police and notify them of who or what he had just encountered. Charlie's shredded body was found the next morning. There was barely anything left of him. The unseen predators were walking into the rising sun. Several gigantic-sized footprints left paths out of Bakersfield and Pennyworth and into the neighboring city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Whew. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this Bigfoot story. I'm sorry it took so long, but there was no way I could have filmed the whole thing in one video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those post notifications for more Bigfoot-related content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.